TV industry sources told us today the negotiation period is over and the Pac-12 and its memberships are working on a grant of rights, which means, hey, here's a TV deal, take it or leave it. And again, from what we've told you, we've heard consistently it's Amazon and ESPN. It's $25 million a year. The term is the only piece we don't have. We've heard everything from 5 years to 7 years. Jake, I think it's going to be fascinating to see what this group of presidents comes up with.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the biggest questions, around this whole conversation when it comes to the grant of rights side, which is the phase they're in now, is, Oregon and Washington's philosophy on what is good for Tier 1 and what is not good for Tier 1, meaning can the conference survive having Tier 1 rights on all streaming? And that's been a bone of contention. And I think it's really fascinating when you start to understand that, this TV deal allegedly, they know their number at 25 million. It's just a matter of how that all is going to be distributed. Are we going to have, Amazon, ESPN, Apple TV, maybe even dipping into it? That I think is what obviously remains to be seen. But the big question for me is this, if you look back at the statement they put out, 2 weeks ago now about how, the conference is unified and we're all moving together in a positive and productive fashion, basically trying to send this, warm and fuzzy feeling. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy that Washington and Oregon are all of a sudden cool with having Amazon carry Tier 1 or cool with having Apple TV, frankly, have any part of this deal. To me, if you weren't cool with Amazon, you're definitely not cool with Apple TV. And the problem is ESPN's not interested in Tier 1. So that's where I say the grant of rights portion is the real challenge now. If you thought getting the streaming and the TV portion done with the carriers was difficult, now getting all your friends in the group of 10 to agree on something is going to be more difficult. So that's where I say, no, I don't think that right out of the gate here, they're just going to agree on it. I think there's going to have to be, I don't know, but I would guess probably 2 weeks here at least of negotiating and working on this thing and figuring it out.
Oh, I certainly think it's weeks. I mean, you have a bunch of presidents that are fairly familiar with each other, and I think familiarity in these situations can breed contempt. I think you have, 8 members that, are going in different directions. Oregon State's got a relatively new president. Oregon does not have a president. They have an interim president. There's just some turnover in the conference, I think, that has happened, and I think that's brought some instability in. But I think generally when you look at this situation, I think the biggest question is, can you get everybody to sign a 5-year grant of rights if the money is not even with the Big 12? I think that's the number one question. And what happens if you expand? Because I also think you've got to find a way to get Southern California. And I think San Diego State is the obvious target there. We've heard a lot about that. San Diego State has told people that they are going to be joining the conference. And I think it's just a matter of who's willing to pay for that. Because I also think that if you bring San Diego State and SMU in, let's say, that you're going to have to pay them an unequal share. Well, who gets the other share of their money? Is your TV deal being signed before you expand good for business? Because the other question I think that you have to ask here is, if you bring San Diego State in, is ESPN willing to pay for that? Is an Amazon or an Apple TV willing to pay for that? And the answer is probably not a full share. I wouldn't know. I don't know why you would pay a full share. And if we pull back the curtain a little bit on that Big 12 deal, you already know the pro rata agreement there is, hey, if you bring in a Power 5, we'll pay you a full share. If you bring in a G5, we're not going to pay you a full share. Mm-hmm. I think that's the challenge that the Pac-10 has, because I don't see a P5 willing to go to the Pac-12 right now. It would make no sense for a school to do that. And I think that's going to be the tipping point here about whether or not you're able to get San Diego State and SMU and who's going to pay for that. Because I also don't think that the Oregons, the Washingtons, the Arizona schools are willing to, give up money to do that. I think schools like Colorado and Utah will do what they're told to do. They will fall in line. I don't know what Stanford will do. Mm-hmm. I think Stanford finds itself in a very interesting position because they're not very competitive on the football field or the basketball court, but they're awfully competitive. They may be the gold standard for education in this conference. So I just think there's a bunch of moving parts here, and I ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't know where all this falls out.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to predict because, again, we're no longer in the land of, what the Pac-12 should or should not get for its rights deal. We're now past that. We've moved on from that chapter of this conversation or this book, and we're now graduating to, figuring out how basically 10 people can come to an agreement on this deal. And yeah, I am someone who says that Oregon and Washington should have more pull. I am someone who says that there should be a pecking order and there should be a totem pole for who gets what and how much money's here and how much power's there. So to me, Washington and Oregon should be leading this thing. Arizona State's probably third, and Utah's somewhere in the middle of the rest of the group of schools because Utah doesn't want to step up and, make their opinion heard. That's my problem with it. So to me, I think it's pretty much impossible to know exactly how this is going to shake out at this time, but I think it is progress that Kliavkoff finally has a deal at least hammered out with the TV side of it or the streaming side of it, and now he can go and pursue a grant of rights. But I want to make sure we're all clear. The grant of rights portion is going to be more difficult, in my opinion, in this particular situation than the TV streaming side. Like traditionally speaking, grant of rights really should just be a checkbox. You shouldn't even be going to market until your group of schools says, yeah, this is kind of what we're looking for. This is what we want. This is what we'll agree to. Go get it done. But here, because the philosophies are so different, I don't even know how you would have done that.
Yeah, I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do because the Big 12, I think, is in a very interesting position in that, if you expand with, again, let's say Gonzaga basketball. Mm-hmm. If you expand with Gonzaga basketball, you're not going to get more money for that.
Gonzaga.
And I think the issue is that Fox is not part of that pro rata, as we told you earlier. It's simply an ESPN deal. So, by the way, they're still not a P5 school at Gonzaga, so they're not going to get a bump in pay. So it is going to take a chunk out of everybody else's hindquarters, if you will. And I think one of the more interesting things is, can you add Gonzaga and San Diego State if you don't pull from the Pac-12? And the answer is probably not, because if you think about the structure of how these expansion deals will work, for the Pac-12, it's a losing proposition. It's a very difficult thing to do because very clearly ESPN is not in the business of paying more for G5s. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the Big 12 has to get a P5 first before they can add somebody like a Gonzaga or a San Diego State, because the money to support that addition isn't there unless you're getting more money. So I just think it's a very difficult climate, and I will again go back and say it's amazing that the TV partners control the alignment of college football, period. It's not up to the schools. It's not up to the coaches or presidents or athletic directors. It is up to ESPN largely, because ESPN's got their hands in so many different regions, sports, schools, conferences. I think it's very difficult to do a large deal or an expansion or a new TV deal without ESPN and ABC signing off on it.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult.
I think when you're talking about not having the biggest player in the game, even if you put the pro rata aside for a second, if you just said, hey, we don't have the support, let's say, of one of the biggest players in the world and what they do, that right there on its face is a red flag. And so this idea that you're trying to expand and you got to figure out the pro rata and you got to, there's all these factors at play. And that's why I say, all this, it's not even a negative thing for the Big 12 right now. It's really just a situation where you're in a gridlock, which basically makes it really difficult on anybody to expand at this time, because one, everyone wants to wait for this Pac-12 thing to kind of pan out. Two, as part of the Pac-12 distribution deal, do they expand? Do they try to expand? Do they get, do they pick up San Diego State and SMU? Is that part of the deal? Is it not? What is available after the Pac-12 gets done doing what it needs to do? And then, secondly, then you add the pro rata thing on top of it. That affects P5 and G5, and you got to add the right school and everything. So to me, I just think it's a tough thing to do right now. You have to, the water kind of has to calm down And then we need to play some football. We need to play some basketball. Some more conversations need to happen. And then I think maybe you will get another round of expansion.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest questions here is, will the Pac-12 survive? And the answer is, I don't know. If they get this grant of rights, clearly they're going to be around for a couple of more years. One of the things I've heard recently is that Washington, Oregon, and Arizona State are not willing to have a buyout. They're not willing to put themselves in a position for 5 years where they have to pay $500 million to get out of the conference. That's going to be a sticking point on the grant of rights. The buyout, the number of years, having a buyout, not having a buyout. Mm-hmm. Like every school wants a little bit of a tweak. I think this is going to be a longer process than we had anticipated. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The grant of rights, in my opinion, is anything but a slam dunk. And you hear Ray Anderson. I know Canzano had Oregon State's new president on his show. She was anything less than scintillating. She said absolutely nothing in that interview. And how can you blame her? Like, I just think if you're Oregon State, you have zero say in what's going to happen here. Zero, nothing. You have no leverage. Certainly people do not know her. She is a new president. Like, I think Oregon State's along for a ride. I truly do. I think that, President Kase up at Washington is going to make the decisions here. She sits on top of the executive committee, and I think this conference goes where she dictates it goes.
Facts.
And I think that Washington, Oregon, and Stanford at a minimum, I think would leave today if the Big Ten would add them.
Yeah.
And that's why I go back. I think the most relevant question here is, will the Pac-12 survive? And I don't know the answer to that question. I would love to think they would, but
yeah,
I don't know. This goes back to my thing on Utah. Mm-hmm. Utah deserves better than this. And I know I say this all the time, but, man, I look at what Kyle Whittingham's accomplished as a football coach. I look at what the Utes have accomplished under Kyle Whittingham. I don't know that there's been a better football coach in this country than Kyle Whittingham, having to deal with what he's had to deal with, the battles allegedly with Chris Hill, just the ineptitude at the conference level. It's just all of these hurdles. And we're talking about recruiting, and we're talking about trying to sell this story. You're out there now recruiting. I have to imagine the Pac-12 TV deal and Pac-12 survival comes up on a regular basis.
It must.
How does it not?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm sending my kid to Salt Lake City, and in a lot of corners of this country, Salt Lake City might as well be on the moon, bro. Like, there's a lot of people who just don't know Salt Lake City. So if I've got a guy coming into my living room asking me to take my kid away to Salt Lake City, I want to know that I'm going to be able to see him on TV. I want to know that this conference is going to be okay. And right now, I don't think you can make that assurance. I mean, obviously, you're going to say you are.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know that you can make that assurance. And I think Kyle Whittingham deserves better. And I feel like Utah is just kind of kicking it. They're just kind of chilling. And I don't understand why that is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they have a lot of history in the PAC. I mean, it's not as though, Utah, wouldn't have the same leverage as a Washington. I mean, Utah's obviously won the conference back-to-back years in football, which is really, at the end of the day, the only sport that really matters. I know basketball is there, but football is the coup de grace, if you will. So to me, I look at this and that's what the outrage for me is. I mean, obviously be outraged by the fact that, they're just going along for the ride and they're seemingly okay with whatever, fate, if you will, has in store for them. But really, it's a crying shame that you're a school. You're not Oregon State. You're not a school that, just no matter what is along for the ride. You're a school that should have a lot to say, but yet you won't do anything about it. That's the problem.
And I think it's because you're not a legacy Pac-8 program. Mm-hmm. You're not one of the original PAC schools. And I obviously that matters, but I don't know. I have real concern for Utah athletics because I just think the world of those people on the Hill. I think that Utah is a great institution. I think it's a great school. I would send my kid there, no hesitation. If my kid were a football stud, I'd send him to play for Kyle Whittingham, no hesitation.
But I'm not. I'm fat.
I would have no hesitation doing that.
Yeah.
And you've won the conference 2 years in a row. You've been to the Rose Bowl 2 years in a row, and I don't think anybody cares. When we're talking about who's got value as a program, I don't think anybody cares. And it's incredibly frustrating to me.
Yeah.
It is. And, I see everybody's comments about four corner schools. I wish we could ban that from our lexicons.
Yeah.
Because I got news for you. I've not heard once that Pac-12 schools are desperate to get to the Big 12. And so all the Big 12 fans with your tail feathers up in the air and, you guys are all sporting your size and we're the bat. Well, I got news for you. The Pac-12 is not dying, banging down your door trying to get inside. Mm-hmm. They're not. And maybe they should be. And maybe Arizona, Colorado, and Utah should be just begging for your acceptance. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. None of them are. So I don't know what happens there. Cyclone Steve gives us $2 to say, would Washington State, Oregon State leave today to the Big 12 for $20 million until 31? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
there's no way for me to answer that question. I have no idea what they would do. Why would anybody leave for $20 million? You're going to get $5 million more to stay in the conference. Why would they leave today?
Yeah.
I think there is a belief that somehow the Big 12 is in a better circumstance than the Pac-12, which in TV deal, sure, certainly they are. But are you any safer as a conference than the Pac-12? I got news for you, dude. You're not. You're not. You're just another conference at this point because unless you're the SEC or the Big Ten, you have no ground. You don't own anything. You don't have any leverage. Who is the Big 12 leveraging? The Pac-12? Okay, cool. Is that really saying anything?
Yeah.
Who's the Pac-12 leveraging? Am I the only one that's taken notice that George Kliavkoff, who ripped UCLA for forsaking the health and what's best for the student athlete with all this travel back to the Big Ten, now trying to merge with the ACC? I don't know if you know this, George Kliavkoff, but the ACC is the Atlantic Coast Conference, the already crappy conference that's all the way on the East Coast. So how is that better for the mental health of the kids when you were saying that it wasn't an option to go to the Big Ten?
It's probably different than what you're thinking, though.
How's that an option for your kids?
Yeah, it's a bad look, dude.
I mean, this is the Pac-12 is a disaster, but let's not sit here and pretend that the Big 12 is all of a sudden some behemoth.
Yeah, I think the only thing really, that the Big 12 has is the basketball side. That's the only thing they have. Other than that, I mean, it's not as though because perception's reality, right? If we're being really honest, perception is reality. And to me, the Big 12, while, TCU landed in the college football playoff, a squirrel finds a nut once in a while. You know what I mean? So it's not like every single year you've been in the college football playoff or you've done an amazing job.
But it's not even that. It's not even that TCU is in the college football playoff. You're losing Texas and Oklahoma. And you don't have a way to replace them. And with all due respect to my friends in Provo, it's not like BYU or Houston or Cincinnati or Central Florida is saving your ass, because they're not. They're not. You're losing Texas and Oklahoma, just like the Pac-12 is losing SC and UCLA. There's no, you don't just, you're not like a deck in somebody's backyard. Let's just put another footer under there to shore it up. It doesn't work that way. What you're losing is leverage. You're losing reputation. And who are you losing it to? The Big Ten and the SEC, the two biggest on the block already. So it's not that TCU made the college football playoff. That's awesome for the conference. It's more money. That's great. It's more exposure. That's excellent. The problem is it doesn't do a whole lot for your long-term viability as a conference. And the other thing is, like, one of the other things that people love to point out is the Pac-12 is a conference of champions. Well, how many times do I have to say that on-field or on-court success are almost meaningless when you're negotiating a TV deal? Unless you're the SEC and Georgia's won it multiple times and Alabama's won it multiple times. What does it mean for the Big Ten? Ohio State and Michigan are auto bid into the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. Look at the already crowned Clemson Conference. How many times is Clemson going to win? How many times did fat forehead Lawrence get him into the college football playoff? What has that meant for the ACC? Absolutely nothing. So on-court and on-field success are all well and good, and you need it. Absolutely, you need it. You want tournament money and college football bowl money. I totally understand that. Today, right now, do you really think that's what's determining who's going where and when? Because it's not. It's not. And I know that pisses people off, man, but that's the reality of it. What is it? Why are USC and UCLA really going to the Big Ten? Well, because the Big Ten wants Los Angeles and they want a Western footprint. So they're not coming for Cal. They're not coming for Stanford.
Because it's garbage.
They're coming for SC and UCLA because it's Los Angeles. Because it's a money-making proposition, and those two schools will have to take less for the first several years they were in the conference. So they can leverage them.
Yeah.
So tell me again, who is it in the Big 12 that you're worried about losing? Because the SEC ain't coming for name the school. What about West Virginia? Is the SEC coming for West Virginia? They're not. It's just there's not. I'm just telling you, man. There's just not a whole lot there. That's
right.
all I'm saying. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
That's
I
just
get
my
where
opinion.
you're coming from. I understand. On-field performance isn't necessarily a huge factor, in TV deal land, in these conversations. But I just think the same way it works for the SEC. When you're putting Georgia when Georgia's winning it multiple times and you show the dominance you've shown, I also think it kind of has a similar effect to the negative for the Pac-12. Like, you're a conference that hasn't been represented. You're a conference that really has struggled to really do anything when it matters most. Like, yeah, sure, Pac-12 homers always want to point to that, you had 6 in the top 25 and everything was awesome, but I just think that, if the SEC's dominant the way they're dominant and you're not dominant the way you have not been dominant, and there are pictures of, people not showing out to UCLA games and you have all this negative press, I also think that's a snowball effect in these conversations. Because again, business is just optics. That's all it is, man. It's optics. And then when you get down to it, it's some numbers. And to me, the Pac-12 doesn't have numbers and they don't have optics. And that's why they're struggling in this situation. And to me, it is unfortunate and it is sad, because I think the Pac-12 could have been the SEC, in my opinion. The Pac-12 really should have panned out into one of the best conferences in the land. And hey, maybe they never had the chance, or maybe they never were ever, projected to get to the SEC level. But at a minimum, you could have been better than what you are. You should have been. And I think for me, when I talk about this, and we go through it every single day lately, because it is front and center, because it is the biggest story in sports, in my opinion, it's sad. That's the feeling I have, that, man, this conference on the West Coast with some of the best real estate in the country, some of the best views, some of the best vibes, some of the best stadiums, is dying. And there's just no reason for it. And again, I know the property itself isn't just going to magically disappear. We're still going to have the stadiums, but it's just a little different. You know what I mean? It's going to be a little different watching SC on NBC after dark. You know what I mean? That's just going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm so interested in it. I just want this deal done. I'm really interested in how it turns out. I'm really interested in how the Pac-12 survives, but we shall see. Patrick Boren says, do we know how much of that deal is streaming? I'm not ready to commit and say I know for sure, but my belief is that they're going to get a game of the week on I think they're going to get a game of the week on Amazon. Mm-hmm. That'd be the minimum bar, I think. I do. Cyclone Steve gives us $2 to say no one's poaching from the 12. Stability until 31. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I don't see that. That's just my opinion. I don't see that happening. Patrick Boren gives us $5 to say the right Big 12 is only secure if they can grow more good P5 teams. There must be a third super conference for good P5 teams to survive viability. I think I go back to what I've been saying for months and months since August. ESPN and Fox suggested strongly to the Big 12 and the Pac-12 that they merge. That's what ESPN has been aiming for. I've been told multiple times, a merger between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, because there's just no way there's no other way to survive and make money. I mean, I know that we're a society now. What did you say to me before the show? 61% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Well, that's all well and good, but that's not how they want to do business in the Big 12 or the Pac-12. And you're basically doing that in the Pac-12 right now. $31 million is just above the poverty line in college football in the Big 12, if we're being totally honest. And if these two behemoths had put their egos aside, they'd still be behemoths. But again, I'll remind you, the Big 12 is making $31 million a year. It's not like that's some unbelievable historic number. Is it a good number? Yes, it is. Is it a number that allows you to be viable and compete? And yeah, it is. But you better find a way to add 3-4 P5 teams. I think you need 4 at a minimum. And I think you better find somebody that can win you a college football playoff game on a pretty regular basis, because you're losing Oregon or you're losing Oklahoma and Texas.
Right.
You better find a way to plug somebody else in there. And I'm telling you right now that team is Utah. But I don't know that Utah is interested in doing anything. It's shocking. I think the best fit in this whole conversation is Utah to the Big 12.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a good fit.
Good fit, yeah.
Geographically, the BYU rivalry. I mean, it's too easy almost. You know what I mean? Like it's too easy. It makes too much sense. So we're not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just drives me crazy. Stephen Smith gives us $10 now. Big 12 fans got pockets, apparently.
31 a year.
I just wish that the Pac-12 released what the TV deal is so we can figure out what other teams in the Pac-12 will do. Whether they sign it or not will tell us where they stand. Well, I think you already have a pretty good idea that they're having trouble getting people to sign that deal because it hasn't been announced yet. It's March 1st.
Mm-hmm.
It is March 1st. It is 3:30 Mountain Time, 5:30 Eastern Time. We're just about close of business for February. We're going to the last month of the first quarter. Do you guys understand? We're in the third month of the year now, and no Pac-12 deal has been announced. Remember when it was October and then it was right after Thanksgiving, before Christmas. Can you do something for me? So what happened? Well, we know what happened. Washington and Oregon don't want their Tier 1 games on stream only. And that's where all the problems started here, because I think Kliavkoff would have put all of their Tier 1, I think he would have put it on stream. And I think he should, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, like I think your age group is critically important in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been saying, whether it's Shaz or whether it's college football, I think you have to be on the smartphone. And I think the Pac-12 has not done a good job of being on the smartphone. And really, if we really want to get down to it, they haven't done a good job of just simply getting on TV. I mean, again, the Pac-12 networks has just not, panned out the way they wanted it to. And I don't know. I guess I just feel like, you can keep saying the deal is going to get done, and you make a great point. Like they were saying before Thanksgiving, they were saying before Christmas, they were saying before the New Year, yada, 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 yapping dog stuff, right? Like that's the vibe it has. And yeah, my generation is the prime money-making generation now. We are the ones paying the bills for the Pac-12. So you might want to get on the cell phone. You might want to find a way to cater to the 30-year-old instead of the 60, 70-year-old driving a Corvette through Napa Valley to drink some wine. You know what I mean? Like, you need to change who you're getting in front of. And that, to me, is just not understood. And whether we're talking Utah or whether we're talking the Pac-12 or whoever, like, I don't care who you are, Ryan Smith and the Utah Jazz. I don't care who you are. You need to be on the smartphone so people can watch you on the go. I want to be able to be driving out to Vegas or driving out to SoCal or driving wherever, flying wherever, and I want to be able to catch that game while I'm doing something. That's the crucial thing. People don't have time to sit around at home and just chill on their couch for like 5 hours anymore. That's not how this country works anymore. When 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, you really think they got 3 hours at night to make some damn popcorn and watch your games? No, they don't.
But this is why I go back to these two should have merged.
Yeah.
These two should have merged.
But the problem is the Pac-12 is too prideful, and they didn't want to do that.
Yeah. And Donuts says ESPN's parent company is hemorrhaging cash. No third conference. What does that mean?
Yeah, who's hemorrhaging money?
Disney's not hemorrhaging money, and ESPN is one of their most profitable business units. So what does Disney have to do with ESPN spend? And I think they have absolutely locked the SEC. So they're going to have the biggest games in college athletics, including basketball, by the way, on ESPN and ABC. So I'm not really sure what you mean that no third conference.
I'm guessing this has something to do with the layoff take again. I'm guessing, but I
don't
know.
I have no idea what. See, this is the thing that I don't know how many more times we can talk about this. Layoffs at Disney have nothing to do with ESPN.
Yeah.
Nothing. Layoffs at Amazon equipment have nothing to do with Amazon Prime Sports. Nothing. They don't. Do you understand? We're talking about billion-dollar corporations. Is it really hard for everybody to understand that ESPN and ABC are business units of Disney? So they're different than the theme parks. They're different than the movies and the TV. It's ESPN and ABC. They're business units. So they're profitable business units. They're not taking money from ESPN. Bob Iger, the CEO at Disney, straight up said, we're going to be more deliberate with the money we spend on rights deals, as they should be. But ESPN, the biggest problem for the Pac-12 is ESPN doesn't need it.
Yeah.
They don't need it. I think they would like it. They don't need it. They have got baseball. They have got hockey. They have got the NFL. They have everything. And they already have the biggest college football. They already have the biggest college basketball. They've already got the Masters. I don't know what else could ESPN want, because I know for a fact it's not the Pac-12 Tier 1 package.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to get off of this, ESPN is hemorrhaging. No, they're not. They're not.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
They're not. That's the issue, is they're not. Mick says Pac and Big 12 acrimony. It goes back years. New sub. Love your show. Thanks, Mick. Appreciate the $10 tip.
Mick, are you a Big 12er? Are you a West Coaster? What's your story, man?
Brady Cook, a member of the program, says, so what is the Pac-12's best option as far as getting a TV deal? Opinion or fact? I think the fact is they would like to spread their TV assets around to as many partners as they can, because it gives them the best chance to get to $30 million.
Right.
Which is the stated goal. They want to be equal with the Big 12. I don't see that happening, because unless, and again, I have no problem saying we talked to the very top at SW Scripps last week. Mm-hmm. They told us they were absolutely not involved in a large Pac-12 deal.
You know,
Amazon and Apple are not going to play nice in the sandbox. They're direct competitors. Why would they do that? And so let's say that you wind up with Amazon doing a Wednesday or a Friday night game of the week. Are they really going to take a Saturday evening football game? Well, if they do, what does ESPN do? Because what does ESPN want? They want what they already have, which is Pac-12 After Dark, the late night window. But they want a good game. And the problem is, once USC and UCLA leave, there's not really a good game to be had unless it's Washington and Oregon, or Utah and Oregon, or Utah and Washington.
One of those three teams.
Because the conference isn't deep. I mean, you want to talk about a guy they need. They need Deion Sanders to win at Colorado.
Yeah.
They need Deion Sanders to be relevant and to be good at Colorado. They need Stanford or Cal or Oregon State. They need Oregon State to take this Reser Stadium renovation they're doing and go to the next level.
Stay hard.
Like, they need it desperately. They need at least two more of their 10 teams to step up.
100%.
Because I honestly think that it's Oregon, Washington are on the rise, certainly. I think there's no doubt that Utah's been as consistent as any program, and then you don't know what you have.
And the difference is that's the same situation as the Big Ten. But what's the elephant in the room? The Big Ten is swimming in it, dude. The Big Ten's got money for days. And to me, it's like you either know how to get a great media rights deal done or you don't. And this concept, and I feel like it's flying under the radar now. No one's talking about what Brett Yormark did when he took over the Big 12 right out the gate. What did he do? He went around, flew around the country, around the conference, if you will, and went and met all of his people, all the ADs and the presidents and the VPs of athletics and the guy who runs the catering facility and the guy who makes the sandwiches for the water boy. Like he went and met everybody. So there was never going to be a question of, hey, are you guys cool with 31 a year for whatever it is, 7 years or whatever, like, are you cool with that? Like he already knew. And that's why I'm saying, that's why I keep bringing up this idea that philosophically at their core, the PAC is divided.
Yes.
The Pac-12 is not on the same page.
That's right.
And Wilner and Canzano can keep hammering away at, this media rights deal is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you're in a great place and you're all moving forward together. I just don't buy it, man. I don't buy that you're getting anything more than $25 million a year, and I don't think it's more than 2 outlets. That's what I think. It's what you've said. It's Amazon and it's ESPN in a certain form, like it's a certain form or fashion of that. And I just look at this and I say, hey man, like, I look at this and I say, man, like it's a situation where you either get a good deal done and you slingshot on that and you like go to this next level, or you don't and you go down, right? Because you're not sitting still. You're either going forward or you're going backwards.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do here. I don't know how you thrive and survive if you are the Pac-12. I really don't. With the 10 teams you have, and again, I think everybody is counting on San Diego State and SMU. Again, SMU. You're counting on those two schools to prop up the Pac-12. But if you get a $25 million a year per school deal, and you got to split that now 12 ways, not 10.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? And by the way, if you're going to be top heavy with Oregon and Washington, and they're going to get an unequal share of the revenue, where is Utah in the revenue sharing? And my other question is, what happens to the teams at the bottom? Like, who's the bottom team?
Who's the one getting $5 million a year?
I don't know. And it's going to be tough. It is going to be very tough, because if you're averaging $17 to $20 million per school per year, dude, that's not bad. That is an absolute disaster. Is what that is.
Yeah,
It is a disaster, because you're looking at if you have I don't know, what is that? $250 million a year?
Yeah.
And you divide that by 12, you're at $20.8 million per school.
This is a code 10 abort.
That you're not surviving on that.
So for a brand like Oregon and Washington, in what should be Utah, but it's not, $20 million a year?
That's
really?
a pay cut.
Like, come on, dude.
That is a pay cut.
It is. So that's what I'm saying. This deal is not like some amazing deal. It's just not. And I get it. Like you have to get a deal done to survive. I get it, right? And I know we don't know all the specifics yet, but we have it on very good information. It's $25 million a year. We've been nails on this. Like I can assure you that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about like 34 or 33 and they just barely did more than the Big 12 and they're all of a sudden in this great spot. That's not what we're talking about.
So if you get, yeah, exactly right, Patrick. You took the words right out of my mouth. If you get $20 million a year and you're streaming, the risks are, I mean, you are, do you know what existential crisis means? Like, it is quite literally a crisis of your existence. Like, do you exist if a wild bear drops a deuce in the woods and nobody's there to smell it? Did it happen? I don't know. Can you imagine Utah and Oregon? on a Saturday in November on stream only, and let's say it's Apple TV or let's say it's Amazon, and you're getting, if you were getting 1 million people to the TV, if you get 500,000 people to watch Oregon and Utah on Amazon Prime Sports, that's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
You're not surviving on that. You're just not surviving on that. You're not. And I really don't know what you do with that. Bucked Up is the official energy drink of the Monty Show. We tell you every day we drink Bucked Up Miami on this show. This week it's Miami because they finally had my baby back in stock.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to tell people Miami is my flavor. I love it. And I think we've sold too much of it because now it's hard to get. They're selling Miami like it's going out of style. And I'm telling you, everybody who's tried Miami loves it. It is, here at the Maverick Center, it is the number one selling flavor.
I want it.
But anywhere you go, if you're here in the great state of Utah, go to any of the Bucked Up stores. I am a guy that shops at South Jordan, Orem, Murray. But, I mean, you can go to Farmington Station, anywhere, St. George. If they've got Bucked Up Miami, you better grab it. You absolutely better grab it because it's tough to get their hands on. But don't take my word for it. Let's get you some free samples. In the description below, there is a link. Click the link, and you can get 3 free samples of your choice. And I'm talking about supplements as well. If you want their greens, I have their greens in my shake every day. I love them. If you want their pre-workout is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is any of their stuff, you can get low stims, so it's got less caffeine, less stimulant in it. But any of their stuff, you don't get a crash. That's what I love about it. I hate when you drink an energy drink and you're good for 5 minutes and then you're just out cold 5 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
Now with Bucked Up, it's so good. So click the link to get 3 free samples and a free Bucked Up shaker cup. It's worth its weight in gold. The Bucked Up shaker is fantastic. All those little blender balls are attached so they don't fall down the garbage disposal or on the floor. They're not all over your dishwasher. You just put that thing in there, comes out, good to go. They're tough. They're big. I love it. Get your free shaker and free samples at buckedup.com. The link is right there below in the description. Make sure you tell me you heard about it on the Monty Show. Man, look at all you guys in here talking Pac-12. Mick A says, you guys should follow BYU on some road trips and check out some of our great crowds, tailgating, and quality football. Did you know that BYU plays football?
I mean, I had no idea.
Don't lie to me.
I love that fans are like, hey, you guys should follow BYU. Do you know how many Pac-12 fans are like, I'm so tired of the show being a BYU Homer show.
Hey, guys.
You guys have Harris LaChance on every week.
Man, you guys drink the blue Kool-Aid.
Yeah, stop putting on Max Tooley.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Drink the blue Kool-Aid.
We are well aware of the traveling armada that is BYU football that will be introduced to the Big 12 this year.
Yeah.
Brett Burnett says the PAC would love to be the Pac-8, so only 8 teams split $250 million. So 31.25. Well, you would never get that much money if it was just 8 teams. That would never happen.
Yeah.
Jeremy Callahan says this is one bucked up media rights deal.
Yeah,
Exactly.
see what he did there? Bucked up and bucked up.
Exactly. C. Kaufman says my free bucked up samples showed up today.
Yeah.
What did you get, C. Kaufman? What bucked up samples did you get? You guys, I think know that I like shakes. I have a shake every morning for breakfast. And generally I put a bunch of berries in it, frozen berries and kale. And protein powder, I put in like chia seeds, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And my wife got me bucked up greens. Dude, fantastic. It really adds, it augments the flavor nicely. So what samples did you get, CK? Craig Kirsch, hi Craig, says the PAC should not expand. It will be losing proposition not only now, but in the future. Those two won't bring in their share by the time the next deal is negotiated. That's a real threat. That is very much a threat. Mr. Preston says bucked up blood raz is money.
There you go.
Have we had blood raz yet?
I don't think so. Okay, we going in? I can go in.
Dude, bucked up Miami is the best. And I will fight you, Mr. Preston.
Die on this hill.
I will get some blood raz, dude. You generally, I have found, when you recommend something, Mr. Preston, it's generally pretty good. Let me make sure I don't lose that one.
Yeah.
We'll have to do that. Simon says, okay. I'm willing to lay odds the Big 12 will have a team in the Final Four 5 years in a row. None had the name Oklahoma or Texas.
Okay, cool.
Well, that's cool, but what makes you more money, the Final Four or the college football playoff?
Facts.
I mean, that's just the truth. I mean, why is it, and every conference does this, but
Right.
why are Big 12 fans so unwilling to acknowledge the damage that is done by losing Oklahoma and Texas? Why is this a thing? Can anybody explain it to me?
But then they're happy to say that USC and UCLA leaving the pack is a death knell.
Why, Big 12 fan, are you unwilling to acknowledge the value of Oklahoma and Texas? I'm not asking you to like them, but why are you so unwilling to acknowledge the absolute blue blood tradition, history, fan base, high caliber, games that they've both won? Why are you unwilling to acknowledge that? With all due respect, Simon, like, this is weak ass stuff. Like, you're trying to say that Oklahoma and Texas don't mean much to you in basketball. Kevin Durant disagrees. He does. Come on now. Justin Sharp says, how many conference games will BYU win in their first season?
Not enough.
3?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, if they go 6-6, 5-7, they should be over the moon with success. Over the moon. Cyclone Steve says, Brent Burnett, that's an interesting idea. If 2 schools jump, will the contract stay the same? It will, I would guess. Stoopsified. Get it, Bob?
See what he did there?
Stoops?
It's like a Bob Stoops reference.
Well, I live in Boulder and nobody is sniffing that. Okay. Why is everybody so enamored with Deion Sanders before he played one game?
Because he's got a track record.
Of what?
Of winning everywhere he's been.
Where has he been?
Yeah, but come on.
He's been at Jackson's. No, you come on. He's been at Jackson State. And with all due respect, in the HBCUs, if you inject any funds in any talent, you're going to win because they're so horribly underfunded. So I'm sure he's a good coach. I'm sure of it. But do you really think you're just going to waltz into the Pac-12 and all of a sudden you're going to inject a bunch of transfer talent and be Lincoln Riley and USC? With all due respect to Shedeur Sanders, he is not Caleb Williams. Like, there's nothing that says Deion Sanders is going to have a successful season this year. Do they win more games than BYU? Who wins more games this year, Colorado or BYU?
I would go Colorado.
Based on what?
Based on, I think the Pac has easier talent to beat. Based on the fact that I think that Prime can get better talent than BYU. I think that Prime can attract top end athletes because because he's Prime. I think he is a hell of a coach. I think I'm not disagreeing with you on your point about HBCUs, but at the same time, I think the guy he's a winner. He has been a winner, and I get it. He hasn't played a game yet, but I don't know. You're not wrong, but I disagree that I think he's going to do just fine. That's what I think.
C. Kaufman says, woke AF, warming high stimulant, woke AF black, LFG burn, Banff, bucked up pre-workout, bucked up non-stim. That's a nice selection.
Okay.
And the USA Shaker Cup. I love it. I absolutely love it. Real quick before football at 50, Patrick Bourne says Colorado is going to take some time with Mr. Prime. BYU will do better. Okay. Craig Kish says BYU. Kevin Pryor says Colorado wins more. Curtis D316 says Baylor AD says Big 12 should be ready if the Pac-12 disintegrates.
Yeah, Big 12 are ready.
Yeah, everybody made a big deal out of that interview. What did he say that isn't commonsensical?
Yeah.
He said if the Pac-12 melts down, the Big 12 should be ready to pounce. I totally agree. Totally agree. Let's see. Kevin Pryor says Colorado wins more. Outside the echo chamber says no honor code.
In
What does that mean?
God's name, image, and likeness.
What does the honor code have to do with winning games?